This is Jack Donovan, author of The Way of Men, and you're listening to Start the World.
All right, my guest today really needs no introduction. To millions of men around the world who follow him on YouTube, who follow his lifting, who follow his spiritual advice, who go to his grounding camps, who've watched his speeches at the 21 convention. He is the man who wants to make men strong again, Mr. Elliot Hulse. Elliot, thanks for coming on. Okay, for coming on the show.
You got it, Jack. Thank you, man.
All right, so we started out around the same time talking about a lot of this stuff. I saw that I went on your website this morning. I was looking over things and it said that you started posting videos to YouTube in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my first book came out in 2007. And we've both been writing and talking about masculinity for a long time. And you started out lifting. And so I wanted to ask you, when did it become obvious to you from lifting and posting your videos and so forth? When did it become obvious to you that helping men and helping make men strong again was an important part of your mission and put you in that direction? What did you see it was wrong and what did you want to fix?
Well, of course, I started out helping men build muscle, get stronger, mostly athletes for football, baseball, basketball, jump higher, run faster, just be an overall more muscular, athletic beast. And so I had a lot of young men that would come to my camps. We trained in the park. That's where we started. And then I had a little warehouse gym. And, so I had humble beginnings, but I quickly began to realize and appreciate the fact that the young men would want to stick around after the workouts and ask me all kinds of questions about girlfriends, parents, school, career, work, all the other things that are important to a man, right? And I was there. I built up a level of trust with them because I was getting them good results in the gym. So I guess they just figured that that I could trust this man with other aspects of their life. And so the way that unfolded in my gym is the same way it sort of unfolded online. I started making workout videos mainly to get more clients into my gym. Little did I realize that, millions of people would be watching it worldwide. It wasn't my intention to be a YouTube celebrity because back then that didn't exist. I just thought it was a cool thing. And I would answer questions about lifting, but then the other questions started coming in. Questions about girls, about parents, about school, about all the other things. And apparently, they enjoyed the kind of answers that I would give. And so that kind of just evolved, So I kind of had like a two-pronged approach. It was help men get stronger and help men be stronger.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about on your website about there's physical weakness and physical strength, but there's also metaphysical weakness and metaphysical strength.
Yeah.
And how would you define metaphysical strength? As how do you help men become better in that way?
Well, it's the inner stuff, right? The mind, the heart, the soul, the things that are like the ghost in the machine. It's cool to build a powerful machine, but what really keeps the machine going, really motivates the machine and is its essence, its why. And so when I talk about physical strength, it's very obvious. But when I talk about metaphysical strength, like the word sort of points to, it's next to physical or it's in addition to physical, but it's also less tangible. And that's really where the root of our physical expression is, right? It's the soil from which the mighty oak or the puny bubblegum tree comes up out of it, right?
Yeah.
Really depends on the soil, right? The mindset, the heart, the soul.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are some of the ways that you help build that with men?
So what's lacking more than anything in our world, particularly as it relates to men, are strong father figures, strong fathers, strong men, strong elders, men that young men can at least trust with their concerns, their problems. Men that mirror young men, that understand young men, that are willing to put themselves in their shoes and support them in becoming all that they hope and maybe that the world has convinced them that they could be, but from a practical place, right? That's what practical patriarchy was all about. That's what the fathers did for the young men. And that's the big thing that's lacking right now. So if I have to recognize what I do at its root, at its core, I'm a father figure. I'm a father to 4 children. I've been married 18 years, married my high school sweetheart. We've been together for over 26 years. I had a strong father. I come from a strong family. My father is a patriarch. He's an alpha male leader. And I realize how much of a blessing that is. And I realize how rare it is. And I recognize how I can be that in, the way that the internet allows for a lot of the young men that are father hungry. That's what Robert Bly says.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys who maybe did have that father figure out there, who grew up in a very traditional environment or whatever, and they kind of hate on young men who haven't had that because they see how they behave and whatever, and they don't realize that they didn't have that experience. Right. Like you have to meet men where they are, not where it's like, well, he didn't grow up like me, so he's an idiot, I see a lot of guys who were interested in my work who, I always say they come from 2 camps. There's either the camp that, they're, done military service. They've had all that. They've done all those things. They've done all the man stuff, and they just look at my work and they're so like, oh, you were right. Right. Yeah, that is correct. That is what I understand. And then you have dudes who are starting at like level 0, right. Like what? Oh, I should be more like a man. All right. Well, how do I do that? And right. So, it's important, I think, to recognize that there's a need there. And I think that's what you do as well. Recognize that there's a need, that these guys haven't had that kind of leadership, and they haven't had some kind of father figure, and they haven't had any guy who actually wants to make them stronger, because the whole world right now is telling them it's okay to be weaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The world is designed in such a way, I call it diabolical disorientation, where up is down and down is up. Oh, yeah. Male is female and female is male. Everything's so freaking confused that even if you grow up, like, I gotta use myself as an example, but even though I grew up with a father and with a strong father, because I was conditioned by the media, the music, the schools, I not only didn't recognize the blessing of having a strong father, but I resented him. And so there's this push away, they call it toxic masculinity. There's this push away from traditional masculinity. My father grew up in the jungle. He knew nothing about
intersectional feminism.
Right. He knows nothing about this garbage.
All right.
He grew up in the jungle. It was the law of the jungle. And he's the type of man that he had to be in order to literally survive. And so he didn't deal with our bullshit complaints. He didn't honor our flimsy requests. He had his way of doing things, and that was it. And so I saw my friends who now in retrospect, I recognize, oh, they had weak dads. I saw my friends that could do whatever they want. They could say whatever they want. They could go wherever they want. They had very little boundaries. And where that ultimately led, which is most of them live pretty degenerate lives at this point. So even with in a world where there are no strong men, when a strong man shows up, people don't know how to respond or react to him. They don't know what to do. They get freaked out in the same way that people react to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump represents the strong father they never had. They rebel. They just want to fight. They want to pull out their hair. They can't stand it that this man is so strong, and we can't use shaming tactics to pull him down and to bend him to our feminist will.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really natural thing, I think, when you're younger to be like, screw you, Dad, I don't like your rules. That's men have been doing that since the beginning of time. That's what you do. But because you're trying to make yourself independent. And I did that too. I mean, I was a totally different person 20 years ago. And, I had a pretty strong father figure as well. And what I actually got from him was he was actually handicapped. My dad actually had polio. So he also has no sympathy for the virus thing,
Yeah.
He had polio when he was a kid, but he was always of the mindset of that older school mindset of like, well, okay, so I have that. Well, I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I just want to be better.
Right.
Like I just want to be treated as I'm normal, and I'm just going to do what I'm going to do in life and be successful anyway.
Right.
And so he was very
There's no
much
value to being a victim.
Yeah, exactly. Like everybody wants to be a victim now. And my dad was like, my favorite thing is whenever somebody asks him about his limp, he's like, oh yeah, I was in a car accident. Like he doesn't go into the story and make people feel sorry for him. I was lucky in that way too. I had a little bit of that. Now you have so many people that are, telling men that it's okay to be sad. And that's the easy path, right?
Right.
It's the easy path to just like, hey, you don't have to be anything. You can just be how you are right now. And that's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's the message that they're getting. And it's kind of a mom message, right?
Yes.
And that's good when you're 5, like you want to feel safe and comforted and whatever. That's a mom message, but you need that order, that structure figure that is going to say, no, actually what you're doing is not good enough. Like you could do better, because that's
funny that you say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
About moms, because I was just reading Stephen Arnio, may he rest in peace, his book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. And he has a great quote in there where he says, when things are good, everybody wants mom in charge. But when shit hits the fan, everybody looks to dad to fix it. And right now, this is where we're at in history, where things have been so good that mommy rules. Everybody wants it's the mommy culture, the cuddle culture, the you're good enough culture, which is completely soft, degenerate, and is not life affirming. Is not life affirming for men. And so we're going to hit these hard times, and that's why we see strong men making a comeback, because there's this sense, and we don't even have to sense it. It's just a part of the cycles of life, that these times that are evolving or devolving into pure debauchery what we're going to see is the rise of the strong man once again, who's going to fix it, because it's all fucked up now.
Man, I hope so. There's definitely something that really interests me right now is the difference between order and disorder. Because order and chaos, and what we're seeing is a lot of chaos because it's complete permissiveness.
Right.
And it really like, you can just burn things down and break windows and do whatever you want. It's fine. Yeah, like you're showing us your feelings. It's fine. But that's not how society works. I mean, that's not a productive long-term strategy for anything. And you need some kind of order in life. And I think that that's one of the spiritual things that men are really oriented around, is creating order in the world. And that's their job. That's the father's job. That's the patriarch's job, is to create order around him. Because, you can't just, the other option is the womb, right? I mean, it's go back to the womb and everything's comfortable, take some heroin, like everything's a beautiful dream and it's fine, but, and that's why, you bristle against strong father figures, because they are aggressive, and they're asserting rules, and they're making lines, and they're saying, this is not this is not that, this is good, this is evil, this is permissible, this is not. Right. And people don't like to be, I mean, like I walk my dogs, and they would like to just roll whatever they want, but it makes me look like a retard. And then, which I don't mind most of the time, but there's certain times you have to teach them to do some things so that because they'll run out in the street and get hit by a car. Right. Like they'll just do whatever. And you can't really do that. And I think that when if you look at the history of feminism, it's a lot of the big literature comes out of the 1960s and the 1960s and the 1970s. And a lot of it is, you can go back and look at it now, and it's pretty obviously daddy issues. Right. You have this whole generation where their parents fought in World War II and went through a Great Depression.
Right.
You know, they were hard men, and maybe they were a little closed off because they've seen some shit.
Right.
You know, but maybe they're a little closed off. But then there's this whole therapeutic movement that came out of you know, the 1960s and 1970s with baby boomers, where they were saying, you know, like, you know, my father never felt emotion. He has this John Wayne attitude, and you know, like he needs to be more sensitive and more in touch with himself. And they started pushing men this whole generation. And what we're seeing, I think, in many cases, is the end of that, because the baby boomers are now like retiring, and they've created this world that we're living in now with their daddy issues. You know, to a certain, you know, it's like one of the. I actually brought it to the last 21 convention. There's a book called I think the 49% Majority. And it's one of the first books like this. And it's all these essayists from like 1971 or something like that, 1969. And they're writing about stories about how, you know, like it's all against John Wayne. You know, like they're all mad about John Wayne, basically. And then you'll see that repeated even in, you know, 2020, when no one even knows who John Wayne is, you know, like that he hasn't affected our lives, you know, but they're just repeating these tropes. And so a lot of this is so, it's just a repetition of things. So I guess one of the things that I get questions a lot about, and you get questions a lot about, I think, is obviously we're in some interesting times right now. And you run a camp about being grounded. You know, it's really hard for men to keep it together right now. I mean, and it's their job to keep it together because that's what men do, right? It's if dad's freaking out, then everybody freaks out.
Right.
So, you know, it's really important for men to not let their emotions get away from them and stay the course, you know, and not be just pulled into whatever craziness that's on the news. And I love that you talk about the news being a problem. You know, like people watch the news every day and it just gets them riled up, and they want to go in this direction and that direction, and they just lose their ears.
But that's with everything.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You know, it's sensationalism. We've become addicted to feelings. So if it's not pornography, if it's not smoking weed, if it's not video games, if it's not the new movie where shit is blowing up, it's the news. The whole thing is that we have become overly very addicted. I guess that's really the right term. It's an addiction to these dopamine feeling hits that come from the myriad of entertainments that we have at our disposal. I like the way you put it when you said we live in a bonobo masturbation culture. That's really what it is. That's what it is.
It is. It is. And I mean, and this, what's happened with, you know, like the virus, whatever, like it's what I said in that chapter, basically, like, be alone together, sit in your home and jerk off and watch movies, watch Netflix all day. And you never have to go out. Don't go out and talk to anybody. Don't go out and do anything.
Right.
Just sit in your home and consume. And that's, and consume like whatever, you know. It'll be interesting to see what happens when they run out of Netflix shows, because they aren't producing them. So I don't know what's going to happen when that happens.
I think that would be a great thing.
It'll be,
Netflix would just blow up. Sometimes I wish the internet will blow up. In fact, I'm a little bit of a weirdo, but like, I'm kind of excited about the way things are crumbling. Like, I want to fix stuff. You know, that's just my nature. I like chaos because I like grabbing it by the horns and making it right again. So as these things start falling apart, like, I'm almost sitting here like, this is just the moment I've been waiting for.
I know a lot of guys like that. Yeah. and that's the thing too. It's like men are against chaos, but it defines them as well. You know, like, men want to create order, but we don't get to do our job of creating order unless there is chaos.
Right. And it's a little boring.
Yeah, exactly. So I know I have a best friend who, if there's a snowstorm and everything's screwed up and no one can drive on the roads, he's like, "Woo, this is perfect."
Yes.
yeah. And that's what men do, is they create order from chaos. But yeah, it does define us. You know, one of the things I'm writing about right now is that you know, if you think about the great heroes, they're all defined by their monsters. Like, they're defined by, like, you think Theseus, oh well, Minotaur. You know, you think, like, what monster did he kill? What did he do?
Right.
You know, and so we're defined by our monsters in some way. So this time that's happening right now is our monster, depending on, you know, how it evolves and whatever.
Mhm.
but it's definitely
As
the
opposed
monster.
to fighting fake monsters, right?
Right. Video
With the
games.
video games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's all make believe stuff. And it's interesting because given the affluence and the time that we have in our hands,
Mhm.
you would imagine, and maybe our ancestors perhaps use this, affluence a little bit differently, but this is a time where we can actually go in and battle inner demons. Like you don't have the wolf literally at the door. You have everything that you need. So why not take the moment to turn in and look at the inner dragons and evolve that way? But I guess that's difficult when you've got instant porn and video games at your fingertips, so you could just numb yourself with fake dragons rather than going and dealing with those inner dragons, until the inner dragon, as you may know, gets so ferocious that you can't ignore him anymore, and then
Right.
you have a crisis. But that's usually, again, that's a good thing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's definitely, and the thing is, for all the complaints about society as it was, say in 2019, um, there obviously there were a lot of very successful guys. I mean, obviously you made your success during that period, like all before that in the world as it was, while people were sitting around playing video games and jerking off and doing it. I mean, the people who want to do it will do it, and then there are a lot of people that are just, like kind of there to feed the machine. And, it's better that if we get more people who aren't there to feed the machine, that's good. But there are a lot, people have always been that way to a certain extent. The mass have always been kind of, they'll do whatever.
And we've become more and more useless. I was listening to an audio program by Mike Adams, the health ranger, and he's talking about this global reset that's imminent. And he explains, why it's happening and what's going on. And in the program, he talks about how you would say the lords of this world maybe recognize that 90% of the people, especially the most recent generations, cannot do anything. They can't do anything except swipe right and charge their phone. They have absolutely zero skills whatsoever. So in a way, they are basically useless people. What's the point? Just get rid of them.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll see. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's so many different ways you could go with the things that are going on right now. But that's actually one of the things I wanted to bring up, because I was really excited. You put out a video called "The American Mind Virus," and I just reposted it on YouTube and whatever. And it was good because you were saying pretty much what I was saying at the same time. And people maybe wouldn't expect that or whatever, but I have guys in my inbox every day. I had one last night, like in my DMs being like, how, with all the, the riots and the BLM and like, how do I keep it together? And this guy was a veteran, like he'd seen combat, and he's like, how do I not let this get out of control? And because I think that, you talked about it in your video, and, it being not a black or white thing, it's a good and evil thing.
Right.
And it really is. I think it's order versus chaos. We see chaos happening everywhere, and it's not okay. And a lot of men want to go and do something about it, but it's really easy for them to be pushed in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And, I keep saying to everybody, like, race war is a pleb war. Like that's what they want, because that's easy, and it'll be short and stupid, and it'll draw in everybody who's capable and thumotic and wants to be angry and right some wrong. And then those people all kill each other or go to jail or whatever. And then you just have the genderless worm people that, like, who can't do anything, it's like, let's pull everyone into this giant conflict. And it just seems like such a piece of theater.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a bad direction, I think, for everyone to go. So I was really excited to see, you putting out that same message, that it's not about that. Like, I think that there are men who love freedom all around the country, and they want freedom and order.
Right.
And that's, if you're going to have a war, let's have a war for that.
Right.
Let's have a war for freedom and order, not like these people against these people, because that's all, like you said, a divide and conquer thing that they're doing, because they, like it's, men all around the country who care about freedom and order.
Right.
I think
Those are manly men. Those are usually men that have had fathers. They pin it like black and white. They use all kinds of contrast to pin us against each other. But chaos versus order, in a lot of ways, is fatherless homes versus fathers in the home, single mothers versus two-parent homes. And so a lot of these angry kids that are out there and adults that are out there causing the chaos, they do not understand, cannot appreciate, have never experienced any type of real masculine order in their lives. All they know is chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. And now they're just being free range. It's like, let my dogs out and let them do whatever they want. They're just going to make a mess. I saw it's like a guy who owns a strip club in Portland sent me a video of people setting off fireworks and doing I don't know what they're called, like burnouts or, like whatever in the middle of the street, because streets are blocked off. No one cares. He said they were doing that for like all night, basically like, it's like a crazy dystopian movie. It's sad because I always feel bad for businesses, like small business owners,
right?
In these communities, like, because you're a business owner, I have my own business, and you put your whole life into that. You work really hard to make something, and then to watch it just be destroyed by this rolling chaos that no one cares about. That no one will stop. Must be really, really just crushing, for those people. It's really sad. But so, I mean, how are you helping? I mean, are you getting the same, feedback from dudes? Like, how do I want to go join the fight, or I want to go create something, get involved in some stupid shit. I mean, what are you telling those guys? Where are you getting them?
Well, I think we have in our Constitution a really good institution for this. It's called the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment isn't just about being able to bear arms. It's about being able to organize militias. And they will make it seem in the media today that there's something right wing, or there's something racist or white supremacist about that, because it's from the Constitution. But the fact of the matter is that the founding fathers understood that at some point good people will need to get together to protect freedom and order, like you were saying. And so I've discovered and have been urging the men in my programs to check out your state's law rules are on it, and if there is any organized state militia. And it so happens that Florida has an organized state militia. They do lots of training, and they're ready, willing, and able to step up to the plate when things go awry. So that's just one example, which I think is probably one of the better things to get involved with, because it's written right there in the Constitution, and the founders of our country knew that we were going to face times like this. And so they put that in there so that we could defend ourselves, we could defend freedom, we could defend the Constitution, and so that out of the chaos, perhaps some order will be reestablished.
Man, I hope that's the way to go, because I don't think the people playing in the streets realize that what happens if you flip that switch. You have 20 years of war veterans that have already been places killing people.
Right.
Like that, there's a lot of experience and a lot of weapons out there. And, I think that, I'm actually amazed that things haven't touched off more than they did. When things first started happening, I was like, I actually put a video out, which I pulled down later because I'm like, now I'm mad. But at first I was like, when Corona first came out, I was like, hold on, don't go crazy, because I know so many guys who are like, it's time, and I'm like, hold on, like let's see what's happening now. Right. And then a few months went by, and I'm like, okay, now I'm mad, and I had to look at. I mean, I can't really join a militia because that becomes a news item. It looks like I look like the bad guy that joins the militia.
But those are the good guys, and the militias are where the ex-military law enforcement.
Totally.
Right now, it's happening, and law enforcement is backing the side of the militias.
Oh yeah.
And I'm talking about like constitutional militias. I'm not talking about private organized guys who are just looking for trouble. These are not even organized. They're not organizations at all. They're basically just Americans who love America, who are protecting the Constitution, protecting their rights, and following the law as it was written.
Right.
So to me, it seems like that's the only right way. And if someone has something negative to say about it, that means they haven't paid attention. They're not actually they're un-American.
Oh, well, everything that's happening is un-American, 100%. And that's where they're at. I mean, I just have found in the past when I join a group that it becomes a thing. But what I did do, just because I'm like, well, let's do whatever I can that's legal before whatever happens is going to happen.
Right.
And I didn't make a big deal about it because I wasn't sure how it would be taken or whatever, but I've volunteered 3 or 4 times I've been sitting out at the Recall the Governor booth taking signatures with all the little old ladies and whatever, doing that. I'm like, this is what we have right now.
Right.
Let's do something that's positive, because I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, I'm going to do something that's positive and see if maybe we can get this evil woman governess thrown out and at least kind of send a message. Right. And that's the starting thing. I mean, if you look at actually the American Revolution, I'm actually reading George Washington's biography right now, the one by Chernow. And if you read that and you don't feel like you've been lazy, then you're pretty awesome, because that dude does a lot.
Yeah.
He got a lot done. And but if you look at the way that those guys handled that, I mean, they had several years of sending petitions and protesting and be like, until there was finally okay, well, there's nothing else that can be done.
Right.
They were all rich landowners that are they were being screwed, and I think that that's probably what has to happen if anything real is going to happen, that, you actually have to get some people with some money and some interests that are being screwed involved, because that's generally how it works. You can't just
where
be a
are the
bunch of guys
lawyers
who are mad.
That's the first thing I asked when all the mask mandates started happening. I'm like, where are the lawyers? Because really, you're right. That's where the battle begins.
Yeah, absolutely. You need people who are invested on that level, and some just kind of interested to see, because there's a lot of manly dudes out there, and they're online. They have big names and whatever, and they have that kind of background, and they have all this going. I'm like, just interested to watch as how many of them jump forward and be like, okay, that's my line. That, no, we're not doing this.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. I think, like I said, we're in interesting times for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But so what are some of the things that you're most excited about now, aside from chaos and taking the bull by the horns?
Well, I think that's it. I think that's what I'm most excited about right now.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life. I'm watching as things devolve, and this is the first time I've experienced to this particular degree. I think every election cycle, there's probably some form of chaos, and in some way, shape, or form. But it seems like it's reaching a climax, and I don't want to be pretend like I'm a prophet or anything like that, or honor prophecy too much, but it's been written that we're going to reach this moment of tribulation and chaos and challenge, and I'm ready for it. I want to be physically ready for it, training my body, training with firearms, prepping in my home, preparing my family, but then also sharing that message with other men. Because even if shit doesn't hit the fan and that, and there are literal, which there already are, but burning in the streets, like all of America doesn't collapse, we're still at a point where what will be required for any of this to to take a right turn, to take the right turn, is for men to come back to what make men manly, and to do strong man things, like being able to provide, right, without having to rely on the food trucks, without having to rely on microwaves, protect without having to rely on the police, because now they want to defund the police, right? And prepare for the inevitable. I think that's what men did in order to create civilization anyway, was to fight against, or to put boundaries up against the chaos of darkness. And things have just been way too easy. Like I kind of am resentful about how easy things have been. I kind of look for trouble. And if I don't have enough trouble in my life, I'll go and get into trouble. But now it's like is climaxing, and I'm like a kid. I'm like, yes, woo! Right. It's the perfect time in my life. You know, I have a home, I have my family, I've got enough resources. I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, it's it'll be challenging. I mean, I think that, in many ways, like the whole defund the police thing, I kind of want them to do it. Okay, this is a teachable moment. Like, I want them to do it, and then for everyone to see with their own eyes what happens.
Right.
And not just like a bunch of kids in universities saying, you know what would be cool if we had like community policing that just like shamed people for doing wrong things. No, that's not what works. My best essay I ever wrote, most shared thing I ever did is called Violence is Golden. And that was really, people always think that it's like me wishing that, I wanted to live in a third world country and be surrounded by violence. And no, it's just me understanding how the world works. Me like figuring out as an adult, like if you take away the people who will stop someone else from doing something, everybody can do whatever they want. And most people will take advantage of that. Like most people will. Most people are pretty good, by nature. They'll behave themselves within a certain parameter. But, we all break the law a little. We all speed a little bit in the car. We all do this, and, push the boundaries a little bit. And if there are no boundaries and there's no thing that you're going to get caught for, that's complete chaos. That people will do whatever they want. I mean, the only reason someone doesn't break into my house at night is because they think they're going to get caught. They're not even worried about me. Because they don't know me. But some stranger trying to break into a house, the thing that's stopping them is that, eventually some men with guns are going to come and put them in handcuffs and put them in a concrete, like playpen for forever. And so they don't do it. Unless they have no ability to plan whatsoever,
Right.
But if you take that threat away of those guys with guns coming to forcibly take you away, because that's violence, then you have a problem. So you just have mass chaos. So, I mean, I'm glad I don't live in a big city.
Right.
That I was really glad I didn't live in a big city, like as this has unfolded. I'll probably move here soon, I think, to slightly bigger area because I'm bored. But there's not enough people here. There's not enough cool dudes doing cool things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I was glad I didn't live in a city, but I do see that in the cities things are going to get really bad, really fast. Because people just don't realize how protected they are and have always been their whole lives. And so I want them to defund the police. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Let everybody know. Let everybody see. And that might be the kind of like turning point, like you were talking about. If things get bad enough that people understand why rules are there.
Right.
Like, oh, I sure wish. And as you said, for men as well, as this started and everything's been unfolding, I've talked to a lot of guys who, think that this might be a really good teachable moment for men. Like, hey, and women, like women, like, oh, I might want a man around.
Right. This is how the patriarchy makes its comeback.
Right.
Because like I said earlier, when shit hits the fan, everybody wants daddy to fix it. Daddy is bored right now. It's mommy ruled world. And it's turned into complete chaos. So a number of things that's going to be a byproduct of this is men will be forced to be strong again. They'll have no choice, and women and children will, not because they're coerced, but because it is just prudent to begin respecting men again.
Yeah, I mean, if you evolutionary history, there's this narrative that men have always oppressed women, and that's why,
Right.
we've just been keeping them down for all of history forever. Like it's some conspiracy that men have been doing, but in
Right.
reality, it's a prudent division of labor.
Right. It's the natural
like,
order.
have men do what they're best at doing. They need to go out and risk their lives and kill things and hunt things and whatever.
Right.
And you have women raising kids and
Right.
building relationships, because it's not like women's only purpose is to raise kids. They also, I always say, if you don't have a woman in your household, you don't send Christmas cards.
Right.
Well,
I like how you say that women
do
represent the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. They represent the future, and they build all the relationships, and they make sure everybody stays connected and do all these things. I mean, it's women who scrapbook and there's all these things that women do that are really good for a community and that need to be done that men usually don't care about.
Right.
That's not what I do.
Right.
But, I think that, hopefully if people are forced to realize that there is a good division of labor there.
Right.
And that it's not about oppressing women.
No.
Not men's purpose is to oppress women.
No, that's a Marxist idea that
Totally.
that infiltrated our culture through the universities and the media to destroy our culture, pit us against one another. We see it with BLM, but BLM is run by lesbians, by feminists. So it's just a different manifestation of the same dilemma that we found in the garden with Adam and Eve, and the serpent sneaking up beside his wife's ear and telling her, you don't need to listen to your husband and his father. You can do whatever you want. Kill the baby in the womb. Be your own woman. You don't need him. And so it happened in the beginning, and we're watching the blood in the streets right now with BLM as a manifestation of the same thing.
Totally. And it's so hard to get people to understand that, because there's so many, honestly, there's so many like white people who want to do the right thing. They want to be fair and be nice. And so they're supporting this thing and not seeing what it is.
Right.
Like they're saying, and like that's not nice. That's not like decent, law abiding, cool Black people,
Right.
who are about freedom and order. It's not that's not what's happening out there. It's like you said, it's Marxist lesbians and like people riling up. I think it's really, they're the mirror of white nationalists, in many ways, and those people are fucked up.
Right.
White nationalists are super fucked up. I know too well, because I hung out with them for a while. And then, it's the other mirror of that.
Right.
And they're both dysfunctional. A lot of political activists, I think, generally are just really dysfunctional people.
The difference is that everybody has adopted BLM as their stepchild, as something wonderful. And I think it's because Satan is so sneaky that he has this. They did such a good job. Take the phrase Black Lives Matter,
right,
and use that to support this evil Marxist organization. So when you say Black Lives Matter, you can't argue with that, right? Otherwise you're a racist. You can't say Black lives don't matter. The opposite is not that Black lives don't matter. I like to tell people that I just don't support Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is an organization. Black lives do matter, but Black Lives Matter is evil.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's really unfortunate that good people who want to do the right thing can't see that.
Right.
It could, because that's what gives it so much power. It's like if, like Oprah is not just, how about you build a hospital in a Black neighborhood? Like that, do something like decent and good instead of just funding this political organization of, comments. That's there's so much that could be done with all this money that's being thrown at this evil thing.
Right.
Somebody that could actually help Black people live better lives.
Right.
And the other thing, that's what bugged me about it is that, man, all these, like burning down all these neighborhoods and small businesses and stuff. If you want to rise out of poverty, you need a middle class to go to. And everything that's happening right now is kind of destroying the middle class.
Right.
It's like the middle class is where people who have pulled their shit together and made something of themselves. It's not all just people who just magically have it. You know, like
Right.
I was driving a delivery truck like in 2007. You know, like I didn't have money. You know, like you just you know, work at something and find out what you're good at and get better at it, and you know, work hard. And that's even a value that I've seen them like take down.
Well,
Which
it's
is
the welfare state. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to learn how to do anything,
yeah,
and you're entitled to handouts.
yeah. It's well, an allowance is what it is, really. I mean, that's how you know that you're still being treated like a child.
Right.
You know, like that's daddy giving you an allowance, or mommy is giving you
Right.
an allowance every week, and then you can go and play and do whatever you want, and you don't have to like grow up and
Right.
actually take responsibility for what you're doing. You know,
Yep.
and that's really unfortunate. I mean, you know, like you said, we've all had it a little easy compared to, you know, people who had to, you know, dig in the ground for food. You know, like, but
Right.
you know,
Well,
we
you even have to look too far. I mean, we look at like Venezuela and Argentina.
yeah,
These are countries that lived in the type of affluence that Americans take for granted. That with the flip of a switch,
yeah,
they're digging. They're not digging in ground. They're digging in dumpsters. You know,
yeah,
they're wearing normal clothing like you and me, digging through dumpsters. And if we want a good look at what's in store for us, if we keep going down this route, well, then we have it, a really good contemporary example in Venezuela.
oh yeah. Well, and it's being played out. I mean, I went to Portland for the first time in a few months recently, and I just went to have some cigars with some buddies who I've been friends with for years. And I didn't even go downtown, you know. And Portland used to be a really beautiful city. I moved there from LA, and I loved it. I'm like, this is clean and nice, and like it's pretty working class, and like there are some hipsters, but there are probably only 1,000 of them. It was before Portlandia and everything, and you know, it was a nice place. It was a beautiful city, and it is a garbage dump now.
Yeah.
It is a complete garbage dump. I mean, driving down streets, I'm seeing nothing but tents and tents and tents and tents and like converted buses and people living out of their cars and all this kind of stuff. And you know, like all the stores are like boarded up with OSB, and then they have the graffiti all over them. And I'm like, this was like one of the easiest, nicest places to live, like 8 years ago.
Wow, it happened so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, all that happened in the past like year.
Yeah.
You know, Portland was becoming so affluent that like and their streets weren't built for it. It was one of those smaller kind of cities that all the stores they started. I know because I used to drive a truck, and you couldn't drive a truck through these places to deliver the fancy food that all the hipsters wanted to eat. You know, like you still drive truck drivers still have to get through there. You know, and so there just wasn't room for all this growth that they were having, and now it's just a dump. And I don't know if anyone would ever want to put money back in that city for a really long time.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think we're seeing that happen in New York City now.
yeah,
You know, since COVID, LA, of course, has been a shithole for a while. A lot of the cities, that's people are fleeing. People are leaving the city if they can, because the cities are going to shit, and they're all Democrat-run cities.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I really like the way you pulled Adam and Eve into it. That was a good. It's always good to use myth. I mean, that's what myth is for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Myth and religion and all that. I mean, that's what it's for, is to tell a story that makes sense in a way that is universal. I mean, I mean, that makes sense because we're watching it happen now. It was happening then, you know, like, and all myths and all cultures are really like that. You know, you look back at, and like, you know, if you've lived some life, you're like, you and I are a similar age. You know, if you've lived some life, you're like, yeah, I've seen that one happen. Yeah. You know, like if you're a kid, they all seem crazy. But like if you look at the underlying message to so many things, myth is important just because it tells a story in a way that is relatable to everybody, but you're going to watch it play out again and again and again.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other, you know, myths and stories, because you incorporate a lot of stuff into your grounding camps and so forth. I mean, I remember when I first kind of became aware that you were speaking at 21, and I was like, I was checking out. I mean, I knew about you years ago, but like I was checking out your feed and whatever, and I had just been out to Antelope because that show had been on about Osho, and you were quoting Osho, and I was like, what? I was like, that's
I was a big
crazy.
Osho
Cool.
fan.
I mean, that was a good show. Like they did some cool stuff, and they're not wrong about everything. But because I live in the town, because right now I live in the Dalles, the town where the poisoning happened.
Wow, that's where you live.
Yeah, that's where I live right now.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it was only like a 2-hour drive. I drove down to Antelope to see where they saw some of the old, buildings that they had that are still down there.
Wow.
And I just wanted to check it out because obviously some history happened that I had no idea about before that show.
Yeah.
I was interested because obviously that's some very Eastern stuff.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite things that you pull in to help, convey your message to men?
Well, any message that I share with men come from my own internal search, my own seeking. And so for me, being of mixed race, growing up in Long Island, New York, one of the questions that adults and even my peers would ask me is, Elliot, what are you? Right. And so it's kind of a very obvious question when they were asking me, but it's also a very existential question. And one that I wrestled with from the time I was a kid, like, what am I? And so I just happened to maybe be around 12, 13 years old. And I was in the library, and I came across the philosophy section, and I found a book that said, what are you? Like, what are you really? I think was the name of the book, by a quantum physicist and also a Buddhist by the name, I think it was Apollo May, I think was his name. Mm-hmm. And my mind was blown when I started reading about religion and science as a means for self-exploration. Mm-hmm. And so that led me down, all kinds of rabbit holes my entire life. I didn't grow up with the internet, but when I was in college, maybe like my first, that's maybe like 1998 or something like that. And my brother and I, we would get on dial-up, and we would use Napster, which is a file sharing. That was way before YouTube, way before iTunes and all that shit. And we came across the work of Alan Watts. And we'd be sitting there, I must have been like 19, 20 years old, and me and my brother would just sit there for hours on end listening to this witty English dude talk about the religions of the East, Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and the living philosophy that came out of them. And it just resonated with me so deeply. I grew up Catholic, and also living in the West, where Christianity has been all but destroyed through feminism. Christianity I didn't feel like it offered me much, right? It doesn't offer men much at all, because it has been subverted by the same communists that are destroying our schools and our media and Hollywood. So the church has fallen into apostasy as a result. And I could see that now as an adult when I look back. But I was seeking. I wanted something. I wanted to know who I am. Why am I here? What is God? And what is this all about? And so that thirst, which has never been quenched, I don't think it's ever really quenched, began to receive some quenching at that age. And so I've explored so many different religions and philosophies. I'm grateful for the fact that the internet has exposed me to all these ideas. But then at the same time, it could also be daunting, right? Because they're all truths, right? Depending on who you ask and in what context and when and where and why. And so it's chaos, And so in looking for order, I just found more chaos. It'd be more books, more different religions, more gurus like Osho, more philosophies, to the point where I was like, I can't stand it anymore. It seemed almost like the quest for oneness, the quest for truth, the quest for order had done nothing but make my mind and heart more confused and more chaotic. And I think that's where a lot of us are, The destruction of the West, of course, has a lot to do, in my opinion, and you could see it with the destruction of the church and the destruction of religion. But at the same time, the infiltration of all kinds of new age stuff, which does, among other things, creates more confusion, what to believe. So, we're at the point here where everything is completely subjective. What do you feel? What do you want? What do you think? Which is the complete antithesis to order. There's absolutely no order when everybody's whatever they want to be.
Yeah.
And everybody can think whatever they want. Your truth is one of the terms.
Yeah, your truth. Yeah, exactly. They're I see they're like, plankton. They're just kind of floating around, and whatever hits them, and they're just floating around the ocean. And there you go.
Whatever's stylish for the day, whatever's the new trend in religion.
Exactly. But I mean, that's what one of my projects is going back to, connecting a lot of dots. Right. Because that is a cool thing about the internet in this age. This is our fate. This is our fate to see all these things. This is our age. And so, and Nietzsche said, you have to love your fate. And so you go back and connect all these things, and then you start to see how similar most of them are. I mean, you say, like, what happened to the Christian church and what happened to so many religions is they get kind of like, watered down and become kind of feminine and milquetoast and whatever. But if you look at the oldest stories in the world, I mean, I started out with the Germanic stuff, but then you look at the Greek stuff, and you look at the Roman stuff, and you look at the Vedic stuff. That's all connected super tightly. The myths are basically the same. And then even jumping a culture that's not Indo-European, you go into like Sumeria, and Marduk is Thor. It's basically like their Marduk. What he did, he has to go kill a monster, and then like Odin does in the stories, tear it apart and build the world from its corpse and create an order from this chaos. And it's just the same story. And that's like one of the oldest stories in the world. It's like written on tablets. And and so all these stories have a lot in common, and there are a lot of the ideas that we're talking about. Like that men have always been in this conflict between order and chaos, and that's what defines them. It's always been around. And so I think that's all there. And if you could pull it together, there's all this confusion because you have all these different, like, kind of feminizing messages, and you have these communist messages and all these kind of things that have to do with, I always connect them to Nietzsche's concept of resentment, which is, basically like jealousy. Like, and that's what you see, like, give me a handout, give me a thing, I deserve this because I'm alive. Like, you have the things and you shouldn't have them. I need the things too. I mean, that's all resentment. I mean, and so much of this society is based off of resentment. And so I think it's really interesting to connect the whole dots. And what you said about figuring out who you are, it's a very American question.
It is very egocentric, narcissistic.
that too, and I'm totally fine with that. But but it's a very American question because Americans are they're all from different places in Europe. Like the original, like they're the settlers. They came here, the colonists and whatever. They're all from different places in Europe. So you have Germans and you have Irish, and they were all racist against each other, and they didn't like each other at all. And then over time, they kind of become Americans.
Right. But
they're not any of those things that they used to be.
Right.
Like, I mean, I can go to Germany and be like, hey, I'm mostly German, but I'm not German. Like, I didn't grow up in Germany. That's not my home.
Right.
That's not that's not who I am, really. I'm an American. Like, I've always been an American.
Right.
And so it's a very American question. Like, who am I really? Because people were looking for this old answer.
Right.
Like, what am I really connected to? Well, you're connected to the whole world that came here. Like that's what America is.
Yes.
And so, like, it's a way to figure out what matters. And it's a bit of a tangent, but the Indo-European myths, there's a bunch of cattle rustling in it. Like, in all the old myths, there's like, who stole the cattle? The hero went and got the cattle back. And that's the American story, because it's like a new place. Like, there's so much of like the really old world that happened again in the new world. So I think you know, that answers it for a lot of it to a certain degree. You know, like
Yeah, I appreciate
you're
that.
American. Yeah,
Mhm,
you're
yep.
American. You're American. Yeah, and that's what we're. And we have our own weird constitution, and not just the physical one, but our own makeup. You know, like
Yeah. The
Americans
United
don't like being
States.
told what to do. That's for sure.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, we definitely have that streak in us still, I think, from the revolution. And
Yep.
it's part of our culture and part of who we are. So,
Yep.
so anyway, what do you have coming up? What do you?
Well, we got the 21 convention
Yeah,
coming up.
I think I'm just coming to watch it and hang out.
That's cool, man.
You know,
Great
and
place to be.
yeah, yeah. So you're speaking at that. Any preview about what you're going to talk about?
Nope, I have no idea yet. I have actually last night in the shower, I was thinking about some ideas that came up, but we'll see how that unfolds.
Right, right.
But I'm really excited about what the event stands for, you know, about making men great again, but then also the patriarch event for fathers. I really think that's where the linchpin for all this is going to be when fathers are strong again, families are strong again. That is the cellular nucleus of our society. If the families are weak, and as a result, men are weak, so the families are weak. The whole society is suffering. That's why we're suffering. We're suffering because men are weak and the family's weak. And then I love the idea that making women great again is is something Anthony decided to put together.
Yeah.
I think it's cool, but I think women will just fall into place when men become strong again. I don't think we need to teach them anything. They know exactly what they need to do, but what's required is for men to take our place first. You know, they say put women in their place. Well, I think women will just snap back into place when men are doing and being what men need to be. So I'm pretty excited about that. Pretty cool. I think those are awesome. And then I have my final grounding camp coming up after that, which is I'm excited that it's done. I've been doing it for 4 years. But I've moved on to just different formulations of the same service and message. You know, COVID created quite a hit where, you know, travel has just gotten more and more challenging. I don't feel like getting on airplanes anymore. In fact, I probably just will not. You know, I will not travel if they're going to require me to dress up in their costume, their clown suit, and put on, or to have vaccines or whatever they're going to force on me. I'm an American, man. So fuck you.
That's right.
So I'll just get in my pickup truck and wherever a gas tank will take me, that's where I'm going.
Fuck
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so I decided to make a shift in that regard, man. So, but like I said, you know, mainly I got to be completely honest. I'm more selfish now than ever before. I was saying to my wife before, I just want to fucking disappear. I don't want to be on social media anymore. And of course I do, because it's what I do. It's who I am. But I can't wait for the day to just hide. I just want to go away. That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's my mindset. I just want to disappear. But until then, who knows if that'll ever happen. Until then, it's a matter of just showing up and being E. That's all I can do, man.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, thanks for coming on Start the World. And I'll put some links to where you can find Elliot if for some reason you've been on a rock and you don't know where he is or how to find him. But
Yeah, nobody.
thanks again, man. I appreciate it.